Making a video game isn't easy. Trying to remake a game that a lot of people love is another challenge entirely. Today we'll be taking a look at the demo for the revival of Freejack Online, a parkour MMO that takes a lot of inspiration and has a lot of the same challenges as Jet Set Radio. I'm FalseProof. I make a ton of content about Jet Set Radio, so this totally falls in my wheelhouse. Let's get started. These are my first impressions of the game, actually. I never really played the original Freejack Online, but I wish I had because even the proof of concept seems really fun. The demo's fairly bare bones at this point. You can only play on one map, the sewer tour, with one character, Jin, so really there's not a whole lot to explore, unfortunately. The controls are fairly decent, although you can't change them, and there's also no controller support. The devs have said they were making this game in Unity, so it's not going to be out of this world for this to be implemented. It's just going to take some time before you can change your controls. It's not too bad to control. You're basically just tapping your forward key to gain speed. You hit shift to drift to turn corners, and when you want to jump over obstacles or ride walls, you basically just hit the spacebar at the right time. You're also trying to build up this meter that lets you do these moves called strikes, which at this point just kind of give you a little speed boost. I'm assuming at some point they'll be implemented to kind of mess with other players. I saw some gameplay footage that also showed that if you can get this totally maxed out, you can get like a super boost and you can just kind of run through everything. It looks pretty fun. I definitely want to see what that's like. Now, building up the meter itself is done by doing tricks in the air with shift key and the arrow keys, or getting a perfect vault over an obstacle. Visually, the game also looks really good already. What's really cool is that they're making all the textures from the ground up, so all the original visuals are being brought into high definition, and it looks great already thanks to the efforts of the dev team just building this all back up. Even at this early point of development, I know it's clunky, it's got some glitches, but it's very early on, and I'm already impressed. I want to shift gears for a second and kind of talk a little bit about how the revival came to be created, and to kind of learn about that, we have to understand how Freejack Online was released. There's not a whole lot of info on this, but from what I could gather, Freejack Online was originally an MMO that was first released in 2010 by Wison Entertainment in South Korea, and then it was brought overseas by publisher GameBridger for their Gamercraft platform. The game went through a bit of a beta period, then it had a full release in the fall of 2011 before shutting down in late 2012. There were some attempts to keep it going, but really what kind of put the nail in the coffin was lack of developer support. In January of 2021, the new Freejack Online website was published and development began on reviving the MMO. The revival team is being headed by a user known as Major Vice, who spent a fair amount of time tracking down the license holder for the game in order to bring Freejack back to life. According to Major Vice, a Korean-based corporation called VR Storm currently holds the license for the game, and negotiations are currently ongoing to transfer the license to the revival team. There's also plans for a Kickstarter campaign at the end of the year to raise more funds for the game, with most of that going to the license transfer itself. The original game did do some interesting things. It allowed you the ability to customize basically everything about your character. You could customize your stats and your clothing and how you looked. It gave the main characters, a decent backstory for a free-to-play MMO, and it also gave you the chance to make your own little custom apartment that was also your loading zone before you started a race. Basically, imagine if you could customize the garage in Jet Set Radio. It's sort of like that. It just seemed like a really fun time, and I honestly wish I'd just played this originally in 2010. The problem with any sort of free-to-play model is that once you can't sustain it, it's gonna fall apart. Since Freejack wasn't, a prominent MMO when it first started, obviously it was going to have a lot of these issues. The emphasis was eventually placed on pay-to-win schemes. From what I can tell, what that mostly was is that in the original game, you could boost your stats with clothing, but there were these new purchasable stat boosts that basically just allowed you to max out whatever stat you wanted, and then you could turn essentially any race into a complete cakewalk. So as long as you're willing to put money into the game, you're pretty much going to win whatever race you want. And that's what happened. How are you going to win a race in Freejack Online if the other player has completely bought their way to victory? The other big factor was a lack of consistent updates for the game. What you could kind of see happen from some videos and comments online is that what would usually happen is that the team would put out a big update, then the game would kind of go stagnant for a really long time, then there would be small updates that would build up to the big update, and then it would just go stagnant again. There's also a bit of a rumor that the game may have also had some licensing issues across the board. Basically, the lack of communication from the devs, coupled with aggressive monetization and potential legal issues, all led to the downfall of Freejack Online. But let's return to actually talking about the new project. Right now, the plan seems to be, at least from the dev team FAQ, to heavily market the game through social media. By doing this, they're hoping to get more patrons who will support the Freejack revival directly. The reason I got access to the demo was through creator access as part of this strategy. The Patreon support also seems to be one of the only avenues of revenue as of right now, because Major Vice has expressed not being a fan of the pay-to-win schemes from the original MMO. While there is a lot of Patreon support thus far, I don't necessarily know if having the base tier be so high, but only allowing the chance of getting beta access is really a good thing. If you want guaranteed access to the beta, the next tier is 3 times as expensive. I know it's a weird balance of making sure people who love the original game are getting their money's worth and getting the chance to try the game as it's being developed, but you also want to try to bring in new players. Right now, because there's no beta to speak of, you're really trying to get access to the demo. If you want demo access, you pretty much kind of have to either be a creator like me, or you have to make something for Freejack Online. You have to make fan art, you have to, share posts on social media. And I get that that's building up the game, but I think what's going to build it up more is if you actually let everybody just try it. And the people who are actually supporting it directly could maybe get something a little more exclusive while they're waiting for beta access. That's just kind of my thought. I think just getting more people to try it, you're just going to get better feedback. In any case, the demo right now is a really decent proof of concept. It's very much still in progress. The glitches are not game breaking, but they'll definitely stop you dead in your track. And it's a little weird to move around, but I'm getting used to it. I think it'll be really fun once it's a full game. I can't wait to try it out. I'll be sure to cover the Kickstarter whenever it happens. It's slated for Q4 of 2022, so we still got a bit of time. The devs were also asking for some suggestions, so here's a couple that I had. I find the controls are a bit stiff. I think maybe having a little more freedom control-wise, especially when you're being inspired by a game like Jet Set Radio, or maybe there's a little bit of inspiration from the Mirror's Edge games. I guess a good example, if I can give one right now, is make directional jumps rather than it being just kind of weirdly straight on. I did find that the timing for doing the jumps is kind of weird. One of the tutorials does have an indicator, and maybe having that as a toggle on and off feature, that could be kind of cool. And then that way, even if you're not in a tutorial, you can still kind of get that timing down when you're actually playing the real game. I also think that maybe having small sources of revenue that aren't going to be pay to win would be really, really good for the game, like in-game cosmetics that you could buy, or you could even partner with an artist who could make their own custom design for Freejack Online, and then their audience could come and buy that merch and then support the game, support the artist, and then have exclusive merch. You could also do something like if there's a hub world, having people pay for small little advertisements could be kind of cool. Nothing like super intrusive, obviously would be approved by the dev team, so you can just decide what you think is appropriate. Basically anything that's not going to impede the gameplay experience or give somebody else a huge advantage over other players is probably fine. Another idea I had was maybe having players host their own servers. This has kind of been done with games like JSRF multiplayer, where people can just make their own rooms and host their own matches of Jet Set Radio Future, depending on whatever the mode is. You could do the same thing with Freejack. Like, you could have somebody just put a bunch of tours in one whole Grand Prix style Mario Kart tournament, and people could just race like that. And the nice thing is that if there's anything wrong with the main servers, you could still have people host these like mini servers and just invite people to race whenever they want. And then the last thing, just make the demo accessible for everybody. That's pretty much it. If you want to check out Freejack Online for yourself, I'll link the development website, the Patreon, and their social media for more details. But that's going to do it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to the development team of Freejack Online Revived, or Revival, I don't know how you want to call it, but yeah, I definitely want to try out more of the game. I want to learn more about the development process and what happened with the original MMO. So if you're interested, I'm definitely down to do some sort of interview or even just talk through messages, just to learn a little bit more about Freejack and what the plan is with this revival. I'm just intrigued. It looks fun. Stay tuned for more news on Freejack Online. I'll probably be covering this more as time goes on. If you want to watch more stuff right now, though, I've got a bunch of videos about Jet Set Radio that I think you'll like if you like this video. So I'll link it all in the description. I'm FalseProof, and I'll see you later. Bye.